Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get started, if you wouldn't mind, it helps out my channel a whole lot if you'd hit the like button before you leave today, or leave a comment. That also helps. I'd love to hear what you have to think about this. Thank you in advance for that. Today, I thought I would do a pair of mismatched earrings. I remember quite a while ago, I'm getting old now, so it must have been quite a while ago. I remember a trend where people were wearing two earrings that were similar but different on either side, and I thought I'd try to do something like that today. Usually when I make mismatched earrings, it's by accident, so I thought I'd do one deliberately today. Before we get started though, I'd like to thank my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 6,900. Pretty soon we'll be at 7,000. That's great. Thank you for your support, both financial and all of the nice things that you say in the comment section. Thanks for that too. I'd also like to thank my patrons over on Patreon. They're paying for my premium content over there. They're a really nice group of people with lots of talent, and I've really enjoyed getting to know them. So thank you for not only the experience you bring to our community over there, but also just for being cool and for the financial support. Thank you. All right, let's get started on these earrings. This is my design idea book. I found these ever since I started doing the YouTube channel. It's come in super handy for coming up, helping me sketch up my ideas. And I find that it helps me to keep things a little more precise and symmetrical because of the little dot graph that's on there. That's really handy. So check those out on the merch store. Today I'm going to do mismatched earrings, like I said, and I have this kind of long bullet shape, Botswana Agate, I believe it is, and I found another Botswana Agate here with kind of similar colors and some stripes that go horizontally. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a Botswana Agate down here in a kind of a bezel cap, and we'll have to use a little epoxy to hold it in because of the way that it's designed. And then I'm going to have just kind of a domed shape up here that's kind of oval on top of a piece of sheet. Whereas on this side, I'll have a Botswana Agate up here on this piece of sheet, and then a cone made out of sterling silver. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to mirror the design either way with just kind of opposites. So in here I'm going to use some thick round wire with some little tiny wire on the end to make some loops, and then we'll attach it. I may drill it or I may put a ring there, I'm not sure, but I'll put a 20 gauge post on the back as well. So I've sketched out some things and done some calculating of stuff in order to get this. So I hope that my calculations are right. I've never done a thing like this quite, so we'll see. I took pi times diameter of this here, which was about 9 millimeters, in order to get the circumference, and I think if I do that, it came out to 28.26, so I rounded up to 29 and made it about that wide there. And then I found the center down here, made it about 4 millimeters wide to kind of give it so there's a little bit of room to wrap around on itself and keep a little tube there. The only other things of note that we should mention up front, probably since I'm going to be doing a dome piece of sheet soldered to a flat piece of sheet, it's going to create an enclosed space, so I'm going to drill a hole in the back of that so that it doesn't create any kind of gas problem. This will just be a regular bezel. I'll probably use 3/16 inch bezel and cut it down shorter, probably 26 gauge I would guess. Okay, so I think first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a bezel cap for this and a bezel for this. I always leave a little extra for filing there. And let's just go ahead and do this one too, I guess. This one I want to get pretty snug, since it's got a little bit of a taper, I want it to be pretty tight to put in there, and then that'll allow me to force that down there around the slight taper that it has, and make sure that that epoxy holds it in there, because I'd hate for that pretty thing to fall out sometime. I'll leave just a tiny bit for filing purposes, but not much. Okay, if you haven't seen my videos before, I use hard silver sheet solder for almost everything, and I use a spray-on flux called My-T-Flux. Anymore, I try to answer the questions people routinely ask me up front. My torch is a Smith acetylene air torch. I think they brand it now the Smith Silversmith torch, if I remember right. It used to be called the Smith Handy Heat years ago. I do a lot more using of shears to cut sheet than some people do. I use saws for everything. And I generally use these Fisker's craft shears, which work pretty well up to about 18, and then it starts to get really hard to cut with. However, they have been pretty good for most of that. Took me 2 years to break a pair, so. I just cleaned up my table over there, because I just tend to, when I'm making videos, I just tend to grab a tool, use it, and just chuck it over there. So it gets pretty piled up over there. It seems like there's a lot of different, variations you could do of this, where you're kind of mirroring the shape of the earring, but changing up some aspects of it so that they're similar but not quite the same. I think that's okay. It's not quite as snug as the first one, but I think it's fine. It's within the range that we can get by with. For this part here, I took some 26 gauge and I scribed out an oval that matched these ovals here, and this will mount it on there like that. And then, at least for this one I'm going to try and make an oval dome shape, so we can see if we can pull that off. And I think I'm just going to, let's cut out these ovals first. First file these, so they're nicely shaped ovals. One of these we can just try and center this on here. I don't think there's going to be enough room to drill a hole and run a ring through it on the bottom, so probably just add a ring. When this stuff starts to boil and evaporate, sometimes it moves the bezel around, so I'll try and push it back into place if it moves slightly. Let's throw a few pieces of solder in there, some left over from before here. I don't need that big a piece. I usually solder bezels from the inside, especially when I'm going to have something sticking out from the outside like this. That way there's any kind of solder mess you have is inside under the stone. If you struggle with melting bezels, one of the things you might consider doing is focusing more of the heat on the sheet down below, because the bezel up on top gets hot pretty easily being exposed to the flame like that, versus the thing on the bottom is sort of protected. I can keep moving it around, but I'm never going to get it exactly right, probably, so We'll call that good. Okay, so for this one, since I'm going to do a dome shape and I don't want to create a sealed cavity in there, because sometimes if you have to reheat it again, those gases will expand as you heat and may cause some surprises. Nobody wants surprises like that. So I'm going to drill a little hole in this, not right in the center because I'm probably going to put the post right in the center. I'll be right back. Okay, so we want the final disc for this one to look about the same size as the stone. So I have to kind of figure out how to make it that size, because when we dome it, it's going to shrink down a little bit. That's all right. So I use these little lapidary templates a lot for ovals. I think if I do something about that size and try and dome it, let's see what happens. I think that might be about right. If not, we can always, move up a little and see what happens. Depends on how high we want to dome it. I don't think it has to be that high. This is some 26 gauge. What did we say? This one? Maybe let's do one of each and see what happens. Okay, I'm going to cut those off and shape them. See if we can make oval dome stuff. Start with the small one and see how it works. Too big. That's pretty close. I think let's I'm going to sweat a little bit of solder to the edge of this, and then we'll just flip it over and put it on there. And we'll see how that turns out. So. You'll notice me doing a lot of pick soldering in my videos. If you want to learn about that, I will put a link right up there for you. There's a good video about that. It's one of those skills that kind of takes you to a different level as far as being able to put solder where you want it to go. You need two kind of things like that. Of course, this one will have a stone in it. And this one will be opposite. Those will be fun. Let's see. I'll use 22 on this one, just to make it a little thicker. Got a little corner here. There's a cap. Alright. So we've got this part. This part do not yet have posts on these or the spacers between those and these and the cone. So let's make the cone next. And it'd be kind of pointless to continue the earrings if we can't make the cone work right. So well, if you saw this on here, I think I showed you, but I laid out this kind of a design. I think that should turn into a cone, and I scratched it out on here. So let's cut it out. Do a little bit of shaping on this part here. It'd be nice to have like a little kind of a conical jig to do this on. I bet somebody makes one. As long as I can get those ends touching, even if it's kind of sloppy right now, I think I'll be able to shove something down there and straighten it back out. I can use these dapping punches maybe to round it out a little bit better. Don't want to get too crazy, it'll put a bunch of bumps. calipers to try and get this to be the same length as the stone. With the bezel on there, it's going to be about that size. So, okay, I'm just going to go over and use the jeweler's saw to cut that off. Be right back. Okay, I got it kind of smoothed out and shaped and made a little more regular. I actually broke a bit off in there, so trying to drill that hole through since it's sealed with some of the solder. So I think I'm just going to put a hole in the back here, facing the rear, to allow gases to escape. And then I'm just going to solder this to a piece of 22 gauge. Don't forget to leave a hole in there somewhere. Okay, I think for the rings on these, I'm going to use probably some 18 gauge, at least for the tops of these. So you know what, I'm going to solder these ones so that they have a side opening. That'll make it easier to hook them onto the other stuff, I think. So let's trim this off first. Solder this on the way I want it to go. Let's see if we can figure out a way to set it in the third hand here. That should work, I would think. Relatively centered. Okay, throw those into pickle for a while. These two need some kind of ring hanging off the bottom. So let's do that. Did I flux those? I don't think I did. Last things with these ones is to put the posts on them. I'm going to use my magnesia block here so I can kind of set them flat like that. this, I'm just going to set it on top of a piece of solder. It flows and sticks to it. Looks pretty good. Now we need to make these little guys. Probably don't need to be quite that long. So pretty close. My thought was I'd do little half circles on each side, but it's pretty small, so we'll see if I can pull it off or not. I need to squish these loops just a little bit skinnier. That seemed to work okay when I just kind of held it down with my fingers and squeezed it just a little bit with this, just like that. So we need to flux those, flux these. I think I'm going to sweat some solder onto the top of this thing. You got to get the piece of silver hot enough, and part of it's buried in this pad, so it's harder to get it to melt. So it takes a little bit longer. You gotta wait for some of that heat to conduct down into that lower part. These ones to be pretty much parallel. Okay, so I put those little connectors on there. It's a pretty tight fit, so I need to be careful not to reflow that solder. And I just need to pick solder those loops closed on the earring part itself. In this case, I don't want anything to flow on that other thing, so I'm going to focus all of the heat on the earring itself. I'm trying to avoid the heating that thing. There we go. I'm going to pickle those, and then I'll come back and clean them up and get everything going. Oh my, I have pretty bad polishing here. And I didn't actually glue this one in yet, I just kind of set it in there so you can see what it would look like. The other one, we still have to set the stone. I'll put a little bit of tag board beneath it to raise it up to the level I wanted it to be. And now I usually use the flat side of my needle nose while I'm pushing down to kind of like lay it in up against the stone. Once you got that up there tight, use the rounded outer part of the needle nose, or the chain nose, burnish that top edge. Using quite a bit of force there. And I'll probably go back with the Dremel and use a polishing wheel to smooth out the very top of the bezel. And one last thing I usually do on post earrings is take my little wire cutters, and I'm going to just go about a millimeter in. I'm not squeezing very hard, just enough to cut a little notch. Spin it. And that'll catch your ear nut when you put it on there. For these ones, I would use the big wide rubber ear nuts. Okay, these kind right here where they have the wider ends like that. And those will stand up a little better. So, there we go, there's this. This. So we got opposites, basically. Stone down here, stone up here. No stone, no stone. I think those are kind of cool. I may make similar things in the future, I think. So, all right, I'll get some nice pictures and put them at the end. Well, that was the mismatched earrings with Botswana Agate. I hope you enjoyed those. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. I'd love to have your input as well. I'd also love it if you'd leave a comment. So let me know what you think. Ideas for videos, suggestions, constructive criticism, all that's appreciated and welcome. Before you leave, you might want to check out the video description down below. There's links to some relevant places. There's a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to help support the channel with a little financial contribution. There's my Patreon link if you want to check that out and get a more interpersonal experience. There's also links to my merch store or one of these nice design idea books that I have found indispensable anymore, so you might check those out. And you can even visit my website where my jewelry is for sale. So check it out. Come back again, watch some more videos. I'd love to have you subscribe too. Take care. Happy silversmithing.